You want to do it again?
I got
Where you can be part of it.
Bang.
Welcome to episode Trace. How you doing, my holy hombre?
Good.
We already do that. Nope.
John, you're too high.
Nope.
John.
Nope.
Okay. There
we
you
go.
go. We're gonna cover it.
We're gonna have to put that in the blooper reel.
Two of them.
So how you doing?
Johnny, life has been a roller coaster.
Yeah. Are you buckled in at least?
No. I'm flying out of my seat. I'm gonna sue the amusement park. I'm done.
Is it a kiddie ride or
No.
what kind of roller coaster are we
It's
talking?
a drop tower.
Oh gosh.
Oh God.
You never know when things are gonna get low.
I'm on the Tower of Terror, but it's real life. They're gonna love that one. That's
Yeah.
a flip.
Yeah.
They're gonna eat that one up.
So
Johnny.
other than that, other than the abrupt drops and twists and turns of life, things are good.
Yeah, other than that, I can't complain. You know? I think it's, I don't know. I like to think that life is significantly easier for me than most people.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I
You
think
got a holy bro?
I got a holy bro. I got great friends. I got a girlfriend who's great. And, an apartment, man. So I think
You're living the life right now.
I'm living it up right now. Things can only get when you're on a drop tower. Things can only get better from here. You know?
That's what they all think.
When you go back up,
Must come down.
I'm gonna have to come back down. But I think
Maybe you just want the ride to break down, so you're just stuck at the top.
maybe I need to get
We're getting
up.
deep into this metaphor right here.
This is a crazy metaphor. Just kind of just look at. I'm glad.
I
this is
know,
better.
this is just naturally going. We've
I
been
know.
going for a solid 2 minutes on this roller
On this one
coaster.
bit. I wish you were on a roller coaster, John, so you could understand.
I'm walking through the park. I'm just enjoying the park.
Are you getting
know?
mugged in the park?
No.
They taking your happiness
No.
or anything? Oh, okay.
No, I'm just too broke to get on the rides.
I understand.
Bro, imagine that.
Too broke.
Life isn't even a roller coaster because I can't even afford to get on the ride.
Moment of silence for John. I'm sorry. I felt bad. I kind of identified with it. So
That
I
got
was
too
like-
real. That got too real.
It
For
got
him.
too real. The bit got too real for
Oh
me.
boy. No, life's going pretty good.
You think so?
Twice divorced.
Twice divorced. I mean,
Episode 3.
episode 3.
Lives.
I'm sleeping on the couch. Episode 3.
How's the wife? How's the fam? How's the
She's not
kids?
talking to me.
She's not talking to you.
She's not talking to me. We had a bit of
He's
a
not married.
incident this morning. Yeah, I'm not married, guys.
He's not married. I'm not married.
We're not
I'm
married.
thrice divorced.
Thrice divorced, John. Thrice. Would you take advice from someone who is divorced 3 times? If they said, John, this is what you ought to do in your marriage.
First time, shame on me. Second time, shame on them.
Mm.
Third time, I ain't listening.
I ain't listening. Third time, I'm done. Dude, that's kind of scary, though. People married 3. And they don't blame themselves. They never blame themselves.
This is getting way off topic.
No, I'm
That's
sorry.
not what we're talking about today, guys.
We're not talking about marriage.
I hope if you're around our age, you're not thrice divorced. You know?
Thrice divorced. Some people are.
You've had a lot of damage.
Was it your fault? Comment.
Probably was.
Comment now. But
Comment now, yes or no.
comment now. We're on live. Wow.
So I got a lot of thoughts going on this week.
Okay,
There's just so much.
What are you jotting
that
down?
we could do. I was just trying to think, what's some weird things that happen during church? I feel like we get so used to it because we're there, so much. But, if, this is my first time at a church,
Right.
dude, what would be the worst worship song to hear for your first time?
So,
Dude. I know one. I got one.
you got
Dude,
okay.
if I'm hearing the Lion and the Lamb song, I'm like, dude, is this Animal Farm or something?
That's a
in
little
here?
scary. The Lion and the Lamb. I'm sure you guys don't do it, but my church, we have we sing older songs, and there's this song called "He Touched Me," and it's just it's weird. It's weird, man.
What are some of the lyrics? Do you know?
Well,
Can you
he
share?
touched me, oh, he touched me, and oh, the joy that floods my soul.
Okay, right
Church
here.
pet peeves.
Dude, we do this one song, and no shade.
No shade thrown at his church.
But dude, we do this one song. It's called "I Come Alive in the River." Yeah, you never heard that?
Never.
We come alive in the river.
I've heard that.
But like, if this is my first time, why are we drowning, bro? Like,
Yeah, that's weird
like-
too. I think some worship songs just, if you're not a Christian for a certain amount of time, you don't get it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. Like, I'm trying to think. What's one more we can
Pet
sing?
peeves?
No. Worship songs that are like
Oh.
weird. If it's your first time in church, you know.
We sing old ones at my, so I have to think. But I know that he turned me around. We don't even sing that
No.
song.
Well, it can be any word, you know.
Let me think.
Maybe like chain breaker, bro. Like,
Chainbreaker is weird.
Like,
We
if
make
I-
jokes.
if this is my first time ever hearing about church, and I can come in and you're singing chain breaker, I'm
That's
like,
awful.
dude, what?
Well, we make
Like,
jokes.
no offense, it's a good song. It's a good
is.
song. These are great songs.
It's
But like,
exactly.
if this is like our first time in church, you know,
Right. I make jokes like when we're in church, like about like country, because I don't listen to a lot of country, but like that's what I get from Chainbreaker. Or no,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
not
country
Chainbreaker.
song.
It's you know the song. There's revival and it's spread.
Yeah, I
I
got
make
you.
jokes about that one.
like a wildfire.
Yeah. I have this one song. It's called One Drop. It's a good song,
yeah,
but it's about Jesus being crucified. I think that's a little difficult too for newcomers.
yeah.
It's like it starts off. It's like, I wasn't there, when he was crucified. I wasn't there when all these things, but I'll be there when he comes back. And it's a good song. But I think that can mess up people too.
Hold on. Let me see. Let me go through my worship playlist. Right
John's
now.
worship playlist.
Let's see. Oh, Holy Bros podcast. It's just
Oh!
on my Spotify.
Holy Bros podcast.
Let's see.
First
let's
episode
see.
should be out.
Yeah, it is, bro. It dropped.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Worship playlist, man.
I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm just so used to them, that like if I hear them, I'm like, oh, that's a great song,
Right.
But let me think.
I got a lot of Brandon Lake in here, but I don't think
Yeah.
anything by Brandon Lake is that weird.
No, I think, dude, he's chill. I think people would just be more fascinated with him if they saw him at their church than anything.
Brandon Lake, yeah. Guy's crazy.
Well, I don't know, bro.
Keep my girl away from Brandon Lake.
Keep your girl away from Brandon Lake. Yeah.
We were listening to it recently, Grave Robber. Good song.
Ooh,
But don't you think?
facts. But I don't think Crowder's showing up to our church.
I think Crowder can
Hey,
go.
Crowder, if you end up listening to this, it'd be great to meet you
I
sometime.
love you, Crowder. I love your music. Your music makes me feel. I like, my dad showed me the song Champion. Brandon
We
Lake.
do that one.
That's a good song. I like that.
He is my champion. Yeah.
I like
I'm not
that.
gonna sing.
You're not gonna
But-
sing it, John?
Yeah,
Can you
that's-
play it
that's a
for us
cool
right
song. No.
now? Can you?
No.
You're not gonna play it for
Nope.
us? Oh,
Nope.
this guy's
But-
a music.
But yeah,
poet.
that one's cool. Like, if it's my first time at church and I'm hearing Champion, like, I'm thinking, like, dude, I'm coming to a boxing match or something.
Right.
Like Jesus was
Yeah.
taking on Muhammad Ali and Rocky at the same
Right.
time.
Yeah, I recently heard my pastor say something about it. It was like, sometimes we just hear like Christian music kind of being about us a lot of the
Yeah.
times. And
Yeah.
it should really be about God
Yeah.
and not just, what he does,
Yeah.
but who he is and what he means to us rather.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into what we're talking about today,
Good segue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what is that, Johnny?
We just want to break down a couple important points, of why we need God.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what the second one was? Bro was not prepared.
John, why would you put me on the spot like that? Why would you do that?
First of all, why we need God.
Right.
Do you remember what the second one was?
John, I don't.
Dude, I literally just
John,
said it.
I don't. Well, let me get it up. I'm going to be talking about.
So that kind of ties into what we're talking about this week. Just a couple important points of like why we need God,
What's our perception of him?
and then what does it mean to follow Him, and like how can He be pleased with us?
Right.
And we came up with the challenge for ourselves to try and connect it to Abraham. Yeah, let's get into it. So, obviously, if you're new to the channel, which I'm sure you're not,
I'm sure you're first and second episode
Yeah,
watcher.
thank you.
Thank you for your
You
support.
guys are scholarly students right now of this awesome podcast. Make sure to leave some comments.
Shout out to people.
Exactly. But also, we obviously need God.
Right.
And I feel like it's a basic principle to talk about, but it's something we over times overlook. Gabe, why do you think we need God?
Why do we need God? I think as far as needing God, it's so much that has to do with our lives. And I know we were making jokes about life being a roller coaster, but life really can be. And without God, there's not a lot of hope in things and in life, because when you're serving God, like this kind of ties back to what we were talking about with like purpose and plan. When you're serving God, He has a purpose, a plan for your life, and that can give you hope. When you're serving God, that you're not going to constantly be going through hard times. And God doesn't promise us easy lives as Christians, but He does promise to provide and make a way. And so I think we need God to give us hope, because sometimes life can be brutal. Sometimes things happen that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think that we just need Him to function as far as in that way.
We're all designed with, I've heard it said before, a God-shaped hole in our heart. And sometimes we go through life trying to put other things in there, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's trying to buy as much stuff as we can. Whatever it is, that's going to always leave an awkward shape there for us. When you were a kid, you had those play sets and you're trying to put like the square in the circle.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't fit. So in life, we a lot of times try and put other things in that circle that only God can fill. So I think it's important to understand our need for Him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's John 14 verse 8. It talks about, if all you have is God, then that is enough. And I think a lot of times as Christians, we overlook that, or wherever you are in life, wherever you are in your life. We think we need everything in the world to be happy, but on a daily basis, if you're just praying it up, you got everything you need.
You're happy. Yeah. And I think that, like we said, we were going to try and tie it back to Abraham. And why did Abraham need God? He needed Him to move in his behalf. And sometimes we can look forward as far as all of Israel comes from Abraham, and Abraham's known as the father of the faith. I think Abraham really just needed to have an encounter with God. I think he's in a foreign land. He's in Ur. He doesn't have a son. He doesn't have anything. And he is obedient to God's call. And I think there's a lesson there as far as that God called on Abraham, and Abram didn't sit and say, I don't know, I'm not sure. But he went willingly and took God's word at face value and said, okay. And there's no mention of like where he's going to take him. He just says, get up and go to a land that I'm going to show you, right?
Yeah, because we can see that in chapter 12, verse 1, the Lord said to Abram, gotta be scholarly here. So the Lord said to Abraham, go from your land, your relatives, and your father's house, to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. So obviously, why we need God too is because without Him, our lives have zero impact.
Yeah.
Abraham just would have continued an average life, and dude, he wouldn't have been as memorable in this Bible that we actually know Him. Like, that's incredible to think, because like when we give our lives to God and when He speaks to us and we act upon it, it's something that He can use to bless others too. Like that scene there.
Right. I recently had a talk. It's the decisions you make in your life will always affect other people.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we make decisions that aren't good for us, and we think that it's only affecting us.
Right.
When it's not. And I think with Abraham, it had that impact where he made a right decision to obey God, to step out, in faith, to go somewhere he didn't know, to meet people he didn't know. And that affected everyone. That affects us today, as far as Abraham's obedience, us being able to go to the Bible and read about it and use him as an example of, this is what it means to have faith in God. This is what it means to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. You know what I mean?
Another reason we need God is because some of you watching are going through something. We all are. That roller coaster can be crazy at some point. But we're all going through something. And whether it's like you're facing like anxiety, addiction, or just feel pretty alone, there is good news. And that's literally that all of those aren't permanent, because we have a God who designed us to be a certain way.
Right.
And those aren't included. You know, batteries are not included.
Batteries, add-ons.
Exactly. You know, so I think it's important to try and show you listening that God has something more for you than just what you're going through now. Abraham just thought he was going to just live a normal life.
Everyone's going through something, and it's easy to be stuck on our own issues. And I think when you go through something, you really just think about you, and what God brings to the table is that he says, keep your eyes on me.
Yeah.
Because your situations will change, but God won't.
Right.
And having the understanding of God that he's unchanging, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, brings me a lot of peace in my situation, because I know the same God that spoke to Abraham, the same God that speaks to everyone is I'm talking to. So
no, that's entirely right. And sometimes it's, you know, I look at it this way, like our life is building this great puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and what is happening right now is we hold the pieces, but sometimes we don't know where they fit. We're trying to put things together,
right,
when really we just need to let go and let God. Let go and let God, you know? Let him put together your life. Okay, don't be the author of your own story.
Right.
You know, let God be the author.
Mm-hmm. No, I like it, and I think that's prevalent today, because with social media and everything, we're the author, we're the influencer. Influencer, that's a big term that blew up these years, as far as I'm someone who has influence on people, someone who my story revolves around me. And I think we're very controlling. Some of us can be control freaks as far as our life. And I think it's difficult to step back and say, God, I give you control.
Yeah, because all the stuff you're going through right now, if you just take some time to be quiet and just pray and just say, Lord, if you're there, please take this away from me. And he hears us when we pray. That's not just something we say. It's actually getting to him. And that's possible because of Jesus. And that's the good news. That because of that he sent Jesus for us, that reestablishes our connection with him. Sometimes, like when you're home and the router goes out, and you're like, bro, I got no internet connection. And then God, he sent his son.
Yeah.
He sent the repairman
to fix the repairman
to fix the router.
Yeah.
And to reestablish that connection between God and man.
I've never heard it like that, John.
I don't know. I just came up with that.
John came up with that. Fly, Johnny.
Off the cuff.
No, that's good. And I was going to talk a little bit about prayer too. It's like with prayer, I heard someone say something recently, and it was like, prayer is really a lot for us and how we can get through things, because when you're going through stuff, you don't talk about it. It just eats you up. But prayer brings peace, and the Spirit can bring you calmness and peace. Even if you're going through something and your situation doesn't change immediately, you still have peace in the fact that God's hearing you, God's on the throne, and he's not surprised that anything is happening, because he understands. And Jesus lived a life here, so he understands what we go through. And it's that scripture. It's every temptation, everything that you've gone through, the Son of Man has gone through as well. So,
and that kind of leads into our second point, like, what's our perception of him?
Right.
Because of the world we live in, Jesus references God as his Father like over like 168 times in the Bible. And there's probably more, but we just didn't get all of them counted. But so that's such an important point that is being made by him. Sometimes our worldly view of our dad can affect the heavenly view of God. How does that kind of tie into how you think about God?
I think I was just going to even go off of like how much our worldly views and our worldly experiences affect our view of God in everything. As far as, like, you brought up fathers, that's a big thing today. Fathers haven't always been in their kids' lives. Some are there, but aren't present as far as emotionally. I think that what brings peace is that, like I said, God, the Father, is listening. And my view of, I had a pretty good childhood, and I had props to my dad. I had a pretty good childhood, and my dad did.
And I think that's like something, on the other hand, it's hard for us to see sometimes, because you and I both had pretty good dads, but no one's perfect. But
no one's perfect.
They did their best. But so I guess what we have to address is, sometimes is our view of God determined by our fathers here. Mm-hmm. So like, for some of us that don't think there is a God, and if you're still listening, wow, that's impressive. If you think there is no God, but
you're on the wrong podcast if you believe it.
But hey, let's see if we can change some minds here. But sometimes we take God as like this dictator, rule follower person that we just have to be accountable to, and that's scary. Mm-hmm. Like, to some people, like, it's not to say that he's not, but that's not. Doesn't just have one quality,
right?
But to say that's not present at all isn't right either, because he does care about you enough to hold you accountable, because if he didn't, then you would just fall into your own way of doing things, and sometimes our way isn't the right way.
Right, our way.
But as a listener, just take some time to identify what your view of God is. How do you see him? Is it like always when you do something wrong, you always feel like he's over your shoulder watching you, like saying, "Oh,
right,
it's getting hot in here"? But no, seriously, try and figure out how you view God, because that's such an important part of life. That I heard C.S. Lewis once say that one of the most important things about life is how you see God, or what you think about when you think of God, because he does love you and he does care for you enough to give up everything he had to just restore a relationship with you. And it's so powerful, because it's not even us just having to now accept that relationship. He cared so much that he's not going to force you to accept that relationship, because sometimes it hurts him if we just think that we have no other choice. But we do, because regardless, sin is an option in our world, and it's a road we can go down. But God is the other option.
God's a great option. That's a good little thing you had there, Johnny. You're just flowing. Jen's just so modest and so whatever. But I think, so many things can affect our view of God, and I think it's very unfair that we can judge God off of the things that we experience here, because this world it's fallen, and although we have good things in this world, there's bad things. And I think just ultimately figuring out, hey, like, God's my Father. And to go on more of what you said, is I know people who have said to me, like, I feel awful, but I only talk to God when I'm going through something. And for a while in my, like, even in my Christian walk, it was like I found myself not always talking to God, and mostly talking to him when I was going through something, when I needed something. And it's like, God wants more of a relationship with you, and that relationship is very important to him. But he doesn't just, as far as if I was always just saying, only talking to you when I wanted, when I wanted something.
It just like rides.
Rides.
It just gets a little annoying.
It gets crazy. I don't know.
And, that kind of, dude, I've been wanting to say this for a while. Like, sometimes our view of God is like Santa. Isn't that crazy? Dude, he knows whether you've been right or wrong. And we only write lists to him when we talk to him to ask him for things. Like, how many times do we just come to him when things are good and be like, Lord, thank you for blessing me with this. Like what you're saying. So.
And then even blessing God, like my pastor recently saying this, we have so many blessings, and sometimes our problems can seem so big, and we still don't thank God for the blessings that he has given us. So it's like, when I go through rough times now, especially now with like certain things, like I find myself saying, like, God, thank you, like, for a new day, people in my life who care about me enough to check in, all these things, because even though you may be going through something, you still have so much more to be thankful for. And I think thankfulness and all that is a whole nother big thing that we could talk about eventually.
Exactly. Because like when you're thankful, you can't be much else. You know, which is awesome to be. You know,
that's the idea, that when you're thankful and you're just saying, God, you're so great. Like, I thank you for all these blessings. Your problems start to shrink. And I think that's one of the best things.
Yeah. And then another thing that you get a lot is like, if God is real, why did he let this happen? Why did he let that happen? And I think it's a delicate situation to address. And it's a reality of the world we live in too, that it's not all rainbows and sunshine. You know?
Right.
It's not a smooth roller coaster like we were talking about in the beginning. I've had things happen in my life that I know we talked about this before, but like, why is it happening? You might be like, if God really loves me, why did my dad leave? If God really loves me, why did my mom get cancer? Or if God really loves me, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it's not to say those aren't important, but my point is that through those things, he's still there. We can still find him through the pain, through all the questioning, through all the uncertainty, because he is there and he does care about you. And sometimes he doesn't have as much of a role to do with death as we think he does. Like, because we have free will, we decide what's going to happen to us sometimes. And it's sad to say, and I don't have all the answers, and neither do you. It's just things happen in life, but it's not worth just wasting it believing that there's no God.
Yeah, that's always difficult. And I think people are I'm glad that we can say we don't have all the answers, because we don't. And some Christians, I feel like, can do that. They think they have to have an answer for everything. Yeah. And some things just we can't really comprehend with our finite minds. God is so much bigger than us. God is so much smarter and sovereign. Yeah. And I think some questions can only be answered when we get to heaven, when we ask, okay, God, why did this happen like this? Because some things we're not going to be able to understand, and I think loss is always hard. But again, there's hope, because we're going to reunite with that person one day.
Exactly, because like, as much as it hurts right now, he's there regardless. He's always going to be there. If someday something comes up where you begin to think about that person, where you found something that person gave you, and you're just like, oh boy, all these emotions are coming back, all the hurt and the feeling of loss, and just whatever it is, take some time to just go to God with it. He cares enough to hear your cry. He's not gonna just, if you're like, God, I'm angry about this, he's not just gonna mute. He's there to listen, and then on top of that, he wants to bring you further than that. I think what happens a lot of times is when these things happen to us, we just get so beaten down that we think there's no way out. Like, we're in this pit and no one's up there and we're not going to get out of here. Right. So we live life in the pit. But we're not just talking about this life we're wasting with that view. We're talking about the next. And that's really scary when you think about it. You don't want to waste your life being so hurt and burdened down by circumstances and losses that have happened that you don't find God. You don't find the beauty of life anymore, because yes, there's things that are going to happen in your life, and because you're starting to follow Christ and whatever comes, it's going to get a lot harder. Right. But the good news is that when we know God and we know the peace that he has for us, we're able to be secure in that. And that's something that we miss a lot of times, because we get Christians who are like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to me. Right. Have you read the Bible? Have you seen what these people are going through? Right. Dude, we have one guy boiled in hot oil and then like stranded on an island. Like, read the Bible, okay? Side note. Read the Bible. Things are going to happen, okay? And that's not to dismiss things that hurt, but we can find strength in knowing that our God is bigger than whatever is going on,
Most definitely. And then also finding peace in the fact that you're not the only one going through something, right? I realized that although my problems look huge to me and I think that things might not get better, it says that other people are going through that. And you can go through
one another's burdens.
Right.
Yeah.
You can go through the same thing. You might be going through the same thing I am. So it's like I can't say I'm the only Christian going through something, because people are struggling through the same questions as me every day with their faith and their walk and everything. So I think I find peace in it's like I'm not the only person trying to walk the path of Christ. There's people struggling at doing that thing. But like you said, coming back to knowing who God is and taking that. I remember I was in a prayer room once, and this lady, she was just basically saying the names of God and Jehovah Nissi, and like all those names. And I never really thought about it, because we can say those names, but those names mean something. Like, one's my banner, my provider, Jehovah Jireh, my provider. And, when I feel like studying those names for me really helped me to understand more of God, like who God is. And because you can't have faith in someone you don't know. It's like when you know God, it becomes so much easier to trust him and have faith because you know him. And that only comes through studying his word and praying, because you can't know someone if you don't talk to them. You can't know someone if if you don't read to them. I think that's just so peaceful. And like when I would be driving to school, when I'd be driving to work, I'd just like talk to him like I'm talking to you. And I think that's what helps too, is like, God, thank you for this day. Thank you that, for everything that you've given me. I pray for this day. I pray that, your presence would be in my life, at work in my life. Your spirit would be at work. And I think it's just as simple as that. It's just, talking to him like I'm talking to you right now, and that relationship's going to build. And,
Man, wherever you are right now, if you're like feeling down and out, if you're over and out, if you're up and living the high life, you still need God. I'm sorry, but that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And the importance of trying to grow your relationship with him is going to allow you to go further than you ever thought possible, and through just being genuine in our prayer and in our time with him and searching for him, we're going to be able to be made whole, and that's something that when you witness it and you feel it, everything else falls short, it's like when you see the best movie ever, you're like, wow, that movie was awesome.
Right.
There's no other movie that's going to match that, like when you get to that point of feeling the wholeness that God has for you, you're going to be as fascinated with it as you can be. And that's just even going to excel your growth further.
Right.
And I want to encourage anyone listening that if you're going through something, just understand that, like with Abraham, God has something for you. He's not done yet. He's laying the foundation for the promises he has for you. Like, dude, it took Abraham 25 years to fulfill the one promise of having a kid.
Right.
Like, that's crazy. 25 years. Like, that's just ridiculous there alone. Like, because what is it? It talks about in Genesis, I'm going to try and do this quick, but God says to Abraham, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. So notice this, that you might be going through something right now, but God is going to bless you. But not just for you, though. He's going to use you to bless others. So be encouraged through that his promises, he doesn't send things out that are just going to go void and just don't come true. Like when he says something to you, it's going to happen.
Right. And even just like what Abraham also showed us is like trusting God, like in the midst of, the waiting period of God, answering a prayer. So, because Abraham waited, a long time for his first son, and, he tried to do things his way. And, but God still blessed him, and God still fulfilled his promise, because we know that God can't lie. We know that when God says something, he's going to do it.
Got no cap.
God's
no cap with
God's
God.
not a capper. But, wow, okay. But God's going to fulfill what he says, and he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And especially for me, like I've prayed for certain things, we can, pray that God would deal with people, some family members who don't know him. I can pray for them and pray that God would reveal himself to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, years you can be disheartened, but, knowing that if God says I can reveal, like trusting God, and we were talking about it earlier. It's like, I said, what are you going to allow God to do as far as like, we can sometimes, God has the power to do everything, but we can limit him sometimes as far as, do you believe that God can do what, you know, what he says he's going to do? And I think it is just so important for us to understand that God can do it. You just need to believe. And
yeah, like, where are we setting our expectation level for too? Like, how much do we actually want him to work? Like, you know, you read in the Old Testament all these crazy things happening, and then you get here today and you're like, what is going on? Like, there's nothing, like, you know. But sometimes it's our culture too. Like, we don't see everything. Like, there's people who've been scientifically raised from the dead before, you know. But our expectation level in ourselves needs to be high for God. He's gonna do something if you just allow him. Sometimes it's our availability. Like, we're scared because we're not in control, and then we just don't want God to do anything, you know? So that can be scary. Like, if like you're somewhere. But my point is, here, I'll give this example. There was this guy I was helping. He was homeless, and we just wanted to get him some stuff. And I don't know, I didn't have much to like spend to give this guy, so I went to this store with my friend, and this lady randomly came up to me down this aisle, and she's like, I have some stuff for you. And she was like, this guy just passed away, and I just feel the need to give this to you. And I was like, wow, because it had exactly the stuff that we were going to buy and give to this person, and God provided. So just, there's crazier stories than that, but that's just an easy example of, like, if we just have the littlest amount, like Jesus talks about the mustard seed worth of faith. Like, if we just have the littlest amount and just step out onto what he's telling us to do, he will provide and supply everything that you need, you know? Yeah. I'm sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, you're good. No, you're good. I mean, I totally agree. I think that God knows the cries of his people. God knows your needs before you even say that. And I think that's something I've been just really meditating on. Like, you know, God will provide, and God knows your needs before you even say them. And that doesn't stop me from saying them too, as far as God knows. But I find peace in that, the fact that God knows what I'm going through and that he understands. And it's just so, I think it's such a miracle that although I don't see him visually, I can feel him spiritually, and I can hear his voice audibly sometimes when he's speaking to you. But the fact that you can feel so close to someone you're never seeing.
Exactly.
And I think that's such a miracle. And I pray that, you know, if you're watching, you feel that God's spirit can be resonating in you, and it can feel as real as sitting next to John in this room. You know what I mean? And then that comes from seeking him. You have to seek God to know him. And he's a gentleman. He's not gonna impose on your free will. So it's you actively having to seek and find him, because I think, like, in many of our lives, we have success stories of how you worked really hard at something and you like reap the benefit of it. And I think it's the same thing with God. Like, you need to seek, you need to put those times in, and that comes through, like, even times you feel like you don't feel him. And it's still praying, it's still fighting for that relationship even when it's hard. And I hope that encourages people, because I've had times where I don't feel God's presence, where, you know, I feel far from him, and it's never him that's far, it's us that is far from him. And you just sometimes got to recenter and say, you know, God, I know I might not feel you right now, but faith isn't a feeling, it's just trusting and doing those things. As much as we say, you know, like, love isn't just a feeling, because sometimes you're not gonna love people, love someone, but it's deciding. It's a choice. Faith is a choice. When things are down and out and you feel like there's no way out, are you still gonna make that choice? Hey, I'm gonna read my Bible today. I'm going to pray. I'm going to seek God. Or are you going to say, no, this is too hard. This is, I don't get that feel-good feeling. I don't get those butterflies in my stomach to compare it to love. It's just, it's crazy. And, but I guess the moral is just seek God. And to tie it back to Abraham talked to God. You know what I mean? And I think the reason why he had faith is because he had a relationship with God. And the reason that God moved, because, we read time and time again, God spoke to Abraham, God spoke to Abraham, God spoke to Abraham, and Abraham obeyed. Yeah. So, be like Abraham, guys.
Yeah. Wow, that's hard to follow, bro. That was solid.
Guys.
Man, that was good. And then finally, the last point is like, what does it mean to like follow God and serve Him? And we've just kind of covered it. But what's awesome is like when you make those decisions to follow what He's told you, He's pleased. That it's almost that simple, you know? And it's ridiculous to think that, but like when you do what He's asked you, it's gonna start making you feel whole, and that's how we get to that place of being whole, is doing what God's asked you to do.
Right.
If it's the little things, if it's the big things, you might be at a point where Abraham was, where you get this blessing of Isaac, and then you get to this point where God's like, "No, I need you to go kill him."
Right.
Let's think about this for a minute. Right. You just gave me this, and now you want me to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. But no, God wanted to see his heart, because what it was important to God at that point was that Abraham, his heart was towards God and wasn't just for the blessings. Because sometimes we can just be for the blessings, but not for God. You know, we can be like, God, I want this, I want this, I want that. And then when God asks us to do something, we're like, huh?
Yeah.
Huh? Or like, what'd you say? Mm-hmm. Ask him. Right. But no, like, so don't be surprised when God asks you to do stuff sometimes. Like, he's going to have you make an impact. And because of what Abraham did with Isaac, he was being willing to sacrifice all that he had. God is able to sacrifice Jesus for us, you know? And there's that symbolism in the old and the new that we can see there. So God might be asking you to sacrifice some views of him right now. He might be asking you to sacrifice some career choices in order to have a bigger impact for him. You know, I feel like that's a big thing with kids our age, is like, what are you going to do with your life? You know, and sometimes God has a way that he wants to show us, but we have to let go of what we want first. I've heard it said before, it's like, we have to let go of our fantasies to embrace the destiny. You know, fantasy is something that we come up with. We're like, oh, you know, I'm going to like rule the world and like, you know, be this multi-millionaire doctor that like does all this great stuff. Well, that's great, but you know, guess what impact it has? None. Nothing. Because God's not involved. Let God cook.
Let God cook. Right. And I mean, I keep getting, like, a little bit before we started, I kept like getting these videos just like on my feed, and it was always like, if God asked you to leave it behind, will you? You know what I mean? And that's crazy to think, and that just goes to the beginning. Like, Abraham left where he was from, and just made me kind of think about in my life, like, if God tells me to leave this thing or this person, will I? And that's scary, but I think that there's peace in that he has a destiny, and that when God's behind you, you can have more impact than you would have ever believed. We talked about Billy Graham. Like, his ministry is insane. And that's not by any work of him, although he was charismatic, he was great. I love his preaching, but that was an impact, that was a move of God.
God working through it.
And I think, I mean, some of us aren't called to have the same impact as Billy Graham, of course, but I think God, if God's behind you and you're obedient and you seek him, God will use your life as impact, and that
honors him, and he's pleased with that when we want to do what he wants us to, you know? Like, that is one of the biggest blessings you can feel in your life. Like, when you've done something and accomplished, even if it's a little thing that he's told you to do,
Right.
You just feel so whole, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then once you feel that for the first time, you're like, I gotta get that again,
Right.
you know, whatever you say, Lord. But then at the same point, we have to be careful that we're not just trying to get high off God's, like, off His blessings, you
Right.
know? But I think we've covered a lot, you know. So let's recap. So why do we need God? Because, like, we have this God-shaped hole in our life,
Right.
and nothing else can fill it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So we can't try and put money at it. We can't try and put family, friends, relationships, anything,
Right.
because first of all, He's got to try and clean out, you know, whatever you've tried to put in there too,
Mhm.
because, like, we going through life, you know, there's hurt, there's pain, and He's got to clear that out so He can come in, you know.
Right.
Secondly, you remember it? What's our perception of
What's our perception of God?
I'll let you take that one.
Just basically, you need to like crying out to God and seeing how our past experiences can shape how we view God. And like we use the example of the father, some people don't have that relationship with their dad for whatever reason, and they let the experience of that whole, you know, of not having a father, and they put those preconceived ideas on God.
Yeah.
We put our ideas on God that aren't who He is. And the fact it's important to know God, and once you know Him, you can move forward in Him.
Yeah. And then finally, we talked about, like, what does it mean to serve God? And I mean, it's gonna bless your life. You know, you're gonna be incredibly whole from doing this, and it's not easy, like we talked about, because, like, you read the Bible and you see some of the things that have happened to some of these people,
Mhm.
and you're like, oh boy. But in the end, you know where they went. You know, they're with their Creator right now, you know, worshiping Him, and that's might not sound enticing to everyone listening, but when you experience that for the littlest bit, you let yourself go and you just embrace who God is and the magnificence of Him. It's worth it.
Right.
You know, it's worth living your life. It's worth going through whatever pain you're going to go through in this life, because when you let go of the pain and realize that He's bigger than it, it's pleasing to Him, because He can work through it, and He can work through you to bless others.
Right.
So I think we did it, bro.
I think we're good.
I think that's episode trace in the book.
Episode 3, man. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Cool. Man, that camera died.
Oh, which one did?
That one.
And what is that, Johnny?
We just want to break down a couple important points, you know, of why we need God.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what the second one was? Bro was not prepared.
John, why would you put me on the spot like that? Why would you do that? John,
Second one is our perception of Him.
and then why do we
When you think you know that you think you know.
you want, okay,
Okay. That kind of ties into what we're trying to talk about today. You know, first of all, why we need God.
right?
Do you remember what the second one was?
John, I don't.
Dude, I literally just
John,
said it.
I don't. Well, let me get it up.
Yeah.
Oh, John, you got your thing? You got your stuff?
Okay. So it doesn't look like when we clip it that I'm like here and I'm like.
So, someone's in the roller coaster, okay?
Somebody buckle in.
So, no.
All right.